know we had people coming from many other activities, classes, and seminars. So we have a full evening, so we want to get moving. So welcome. My name is Faye Ginsberg. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the NYU Council for the Study of Disability, which I've had the great pleasure to co-direct with Ann Gert. Where's Ann? Who's been a great partner in crime on this. And also the Center for Media, Culture, and History, which I direct with Peggy Bale, NYU Steinhardt Department of Media, Culture, and Communication, and the Tisch Department of Film and Television. I especially want to thank Peggy Bale, Associate Director of the Center for Media, Culture, and History, and Lynn McVeigh and the staff here at Tisch, as well as our student assistants for their help in organizing all the details of the event today. We're really fortunate to have the opportunity to see this remarkable documentary film, Who Cares About Kelsey, which follows the trajectory of Kelsey Carroll through the complexities of navigating high school with ADHD, an unstable home life, and emotional challenges. During Kelsey's sophomore year, a new school leadership team implemented a youth-directed planning process called Renew and other reforms to improve the school's culture for students like Kelsey and reduce the dropout rate, a school-wide overhaul that gave Kelsey a chance at a different outcome. And I think for those of us who keep up with statistics about disability in the US, we know that students presenting with a diagnosis are so much greater risk of losing the opportunity to finish their education. So this film is so important in many, many ways to address that. We have with us today not only the filmmaker Dan Habib and Kelsey Carroll, whose life we see on screen and who I guarantee you will care about at the end of the film, since the film asks who cares. I do. Okay, so as well as two distinguished NYU faculty members, Christy Koenig and Lynn McVeigh, who are both deeply involved in disability education and the arts. In order to take full advantage of the time we have today, I'm going to introduce Dan and Kelsey, who will take a few minutes to introduce the film. And then after the screening, I'll introduce our other speakers as they come forward to take their places up here to start off discussion, which will then open up to all of you. So first of all, Kelsey Carroll, the central subject of the documentary, received her high school diploma from Somersworth High School in New Hampshire in June of 2010. Oh my gosh, that's a spoiler alert. I'm sorry. Okay.
You don't need to read anymore, but you can stop this.
Again, supported by the intensive, remarkable model of the self-directed planning support of Renew. For anyone who's helped direct a child through disability concerns in high school, it's just like such an exciting project to see on screen. Since then, Kelsey has presented on behalf of the film and the Renew program at over 50 conferences and events for more than 10,000 people. So now I think it's like up to 10,200 after today, including the U.S. Department of Education and the National Association of School Psychologists. Kelsey's now 22 and she began college in January 2013 and she's studying psychology towards a career as a school counselor. Dan Habib is the filmmaker in residence at the Institute on Disability at the University of New Hampshire, where he started since 2008 after an award-winning career as a photographer. And he's the director and producer of two documentaries, including Samuel, which we were really honored to be able to show here and have a similar kind of discussion a number of years ago, a wonderful film, and Who Cares About Kelsey, which we're showing today. His films have been screened at universities, national conferences, independent theaters, and have been used as a catalyst for inclusive education and school transformation across the country and internationally. The first film, including Samuel, received an Emmy Award nomination and was broadcast nationwide on public television in the fall of 2009. The film's been featured on Good Morning America and All Things Considered and has been translated into 17 languages. This film was recently featured in Education Week and has been screened at 11 film festivals, winning Best Feature Film at the Lights Camera Help Film Festival. Just a great title. So please join me in welcoming Dan and Kelsey.
So, thanks everybody. I'm just going to let you briefly say hi to Kelsey. Hi Kelsey. And then we're going to join together after the film with everybody else and have a great discussion. So you're going to have a lot to ask. I get my words in now because nobody wants to talk to me afterwards. I just want to talk to Kelsey. So, and I know you'll have a lot to ask her and talk to her about. So first of all, thank you, Faye, and thanks Christy and Lynn and everybody, Peggy Vale, who's here somewhere, who did so much work on behalf of this project. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you. On behalf of this event. And you always hope that you have this problem, which is that not everyone has enough chairs. That's like the dream of an event organizer and a filmmaker. So I'm sorry for those of you who are sitting on the floor, but it is a really great thing that you're all here tonight, and I appreciate you coming out. what I want to do is just quickly give you a sense of why I made this film, how it grew out of including Samuel in some interesting ways, and then we're going to show the film and have a great discussion afterwards. So, including Samuel, how many of you are familiar with the film? A little bit, somewhat? Wow, that's a lot of you. That's great. So, for those of you who aren't, just a few quick sentences. The film's about my own son, Samuel, who some of you here, I have a lot of some family and friends here who know Samuel really well personally. He's a pretty amazing kid. He's a huge NASCAR fan. We're up in New England, so he loves the Red Sox, the Patriots. He's done Boy Scouts, he skis, he does horseback riding. What else? Got a lot of friends. He's in 7th grade, he's on honor roll. What's that? Goes to sleepaway camp, thank you, Kelsey. And he also has cerebral palsy. He uses a wheelchair. He's got a feeding tube. He uses a communication device to speak. He's got an underlying mitochondrial disorder. So really different ways that I could talk about Samuel. And all those are part of Samuel. You know, he does have a disability. That is part of his life. But all that other stuff is really how he lives his life in such a vibrant way. So I decided years ago to start working on this film with the hope that somehow people would see kids with disabilities differently, and that they would get to know the child, and with the firm belief that you cannot truly get to know any child unless you're with them all day long as a peer in their school together. And unfortunately, kids with disabilities are still systematically segregated in this country and in most countries. And I'm kind of an optimist, but I think that we will someday look back on this time like we do around racial segregation and think, what were we possibly thinking that we were systematically segregating so many children? And it's a really personal issue for me, of course, having Samuel as a son. But what happened was I started showing this film, and as Faye said, I've got the chance, I've shown it in 40 states, hundreds of times around the country, and everywhere I've gone, people have asked a variation of the question, what about kids with hidden disabilities? What about kids whose disabilities aren't as obvious as Samuel, who rolls into a room in his wheelchair and everyone knows he has a disability? And so what are hidden disabilities? You might call them emotional behavioral disabilities. In schools, they're sometimes labeled as EH, like emotionally handicapped kids or emotionally disabled kids. But what I'm talking about specifically is anxiety, depression, ADHD, post-traumatic stress, bipolar, schizophrenia, learning disabilities, fetal alcohol syndrome. You know, I could go on and on, eating disorders. These are all disabilities, they're all things that create significant challenges for kids to be successful in school, and can generally, and autism I'll put in there as well, create some really challenging behavior for a lot of kids. So the problem is that when I started digging into the research, I found that kids with these disabilities are among the most segregated of all kids with disabilities. So about 65% of kids with these emotional behavioral disabilities are not included in regular schools and in regular classrooms, 65%. Their dropout rate hovers at about 60% nationally. Kids with these disabilities drop out at about 60%, 40% graduate. And they are twice as likely as any other kid with a disability to, once they either leave or graduate from school, to be living on the street, to be incarcerated, to be addicted to drugs, to become a teen parent. So those are awful outcomes. And I hope everyone is, really repulsed by those outcomes. We should never accept those kind of outcomes for our kids. So I thought maybe there's a way that I could do a film that would be a catalyst for the kind of discussion and some educational reform that, including Samuel, has played some role in. It's just one film in this big world, but it has led to some really significant impacts around the country. So I said, well, how do you do that? And so there's some filmmakers here in the audience. You start thinking about, well, how do I tell the story? How do I tell this huge and totally overwhelming story? And I thought, well, maybe if I could find a school that is doing it right, that not because of money, or because I think that's tricky when you just say it's all about pouring resources into it. It's not that. It's about how do we use the resources we have, the educational practices we know work, and how do we use them effectively in a public school. So I was fortunate in that I live in New Hampshire, and an hour from my house is an incredible high school, Somersworth High School, that has a national reputation for supporting and including kids with these type of disabilities, but also just creating an incredible school culture. And in fact, in 4 years, over the course of 2006 to 2010, they brought their dropout rate down by 75%, and they reduced their disciplinary problems by 65%. And they were a school that had one of the highest dropout rates and some of the most challenging behavior anywhere in the state. So you ask, how did they do that? Well, that's kind of what the film's about. And so I spent 3 months in the school just getting a sense of the school culture and climate and going there every week and documenting the school. That was in 2009 in the spring. And then in the fall, I asked one of the people who you're going to meet in the film, Kathy Frankor, an amazing educator there, to start introducing me to teenagers. And I met about 20 different people, and then I met Kelsey, and I was like, don't introduce me to anybody else. This is the most awesome, honest, courageous, strong person with the most complicated set of challenges in her life. And she was making it. You know, it was dicey. I mean, I know Faye told you that she graduated, but I don't think you'll see that that came easily. And we literally didn't know until the day before your graduation if it was actually going to happen or not. And there's a lot more to the story that you're going to see in the film. So, two things that you're going to see in this film. One is an approach called positive behavioral supports, or positive behavioral interventions and supports. And it's a nationally established approach to, rather than these punitive 3 strikes you're out policies, which have absolutely no research of working. You know, we're implementing them kind of impulsively around the country, but all they do is drive kids into the juvenile justice system, and they drive a lot of kids to drop out of school. And it's awful because these programs are just all based on punitive measures. So that's one approach that doesn't work, but there are approaches that actually think about how can we identify the kids in our schools that need interventions, how do we deliver them, and how do we use a positive approach to doing all that? So to create positive incentives for doing the right things for both kids and staff, rather than just punitive consequences for quote-unquote doing the wrong thing. So that's the framework, but you're also going to see Kelsey going through this intensive youth-directed planning process that was very empowering, that changed, I think, the trajectory for life. So the film is really about Kelsey's hard work, Kelsey's incredible spirit, and how she intersected with this public school that is not well-resourced to create some incredible outcomes. And she's just one of dozens and dozens of kids that they've helped through this school. So finally, before we start, I guess I want you to see a film that's really different from Including Samuels. It's not my story, it's Kelsey's story. It's a very honest film in the sense that this is a real high school and real people, so you can hear some real language. I think there's some words that start with F that many of you have heard before, but just to let you know, it's kind of like an R-rated film. I don't think it's going to be a problem for anybody in the room. I think you're good. We do, it has some difficult material, but we do have, we go to high schools a lot, Kelsey and I, and we co-present, and we have a bleeped version. We have the Kelsey modified and the full throttle Kelsey version. Anyway, and Kelsey and I it's just so great because we now travel around the country and we're doing screenings all around the country for the next 6 months, and it's just an incredible honor and privilege to be with you here today. You guys have been amazing at hosting and organizing the event, and for all of you who have turned out, this is the New York City premiere of Who Cares About Kelsey. Thanks for being here. Great. All right, hi everybody again. So now it is my great honor to reintroduce Kelsey Carroll. I know you're going to have a lot of questions for Kelsey and the panel, but before I go on anymore, I want to introduce somebody that I didn't know had been here earlier, so I want to introduce him now. Diego Saragna. Diego, stand up. Diego, stand up. Come on. Diego is one of the editors of the film. So Diego knows his footage better than I do. We spent 6-8 months, maybe, working on this.
Yeah.
Sound about right? And Diego is an incredible editor who worked with Rose Rosenblatt as the lead editor, who's actually actually they were co-editors on the project, but she's in California right now. And those of you who know film know that unless you have a great editor, this is nothing. And you cannot do it.
Does Diego have business cards?
Yes, I'm going to give you some props here. He's an amazingly talented guy, but really, I mean, Diego literally watched hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage.
I'm sorry.
And this is the first night he's meeting Kelsey, actually, right?
Wow.
So it's pretty cool. So we're going to have lots to talk about when we go out afterwards. But anyway, I just wanted to say that it's an incredible, blessing to have an editor like Diego work on a project who's so talented and who can see the story and help me find the story when it's not always that easy to find. It looks easy now, but it was a long process. So thanks for being here, Diego. All right, so now I think, Faye, you're going to kick it off here.
Yeah, okay, so because we've got you up here, so just before we have the whole panel come up, I know there are probably 2 questions everybody in the audience is dying to have you answer. So one is probably the more obvious one, which is, what have you been doing since the end of the film? But the second one is, how did you manage to look so natural and composed with this camera following you around for all that time? It's really amazing and also there's the honesty with which you dealt with the camera and your whole family and everyone around you. So I don't know if you want to comment a little bit on that because it's remarkable.
That's a different question.
You could pick one order or you could ignore one.
Okay. Since filming, I'm going to school. I go to Hester College for psychology. I took a term off. Life was getting a little bit too crazy and my grades were suffering, so I needed to take a break. I bought a car. I travel with the film part-time. I work for the IOD part-time.
Any life updates you want to share? Sorry.
Why don't you just tell them?
No, you can tell them.
I'm not with Sean anymore. Yeah, usually everyone's just like jumping up by now. About 6 months ago, it turned abusive, and I have a restraining order. So things are going great from there. Yeah, I hate watching this because in the background, I'm like, die please, just die already. But thank God when it goes on TV, we're taking him out.
Yeah, and I just quickly add to that, we have to cut the film down from 74 minutes to 56 to be on public television next year, and we have to cut out 20 minutes. I told Kelsey on the drive down, so I think we're just going to cut out Sean. She's like, yes! That will take care of at least 15 minutes in a good way. I guess the second question she asked was what it was like having a camera, i.e. me, follow you around for 2 years.
Well, he hides really good. And I had a lot of fun with it. I would mess with people at school, like in the lunchroom. I'd just walk up to them. I'd be all mic'd up, and I know they were talking shit. I'm like, I know it. I'm like, I'm just gonna walk up to them and let Dan hear them talk shit about him. So I'm like, you know, he can hear you, right? And they like got so mad at me, but wasn't that hard. I don't know. I think I wasn't afraid of the camera because I used to dance, so on stage in front of people pretty much helped out a little bit. I don't know. It was cool. He hid behind people.
I mean, part of why I chose Kelsey is because she was so comfortable in front of the camera. And you saw there was a girl named Anika in a couple of scenes. She's the one who threw the banana. And I actually was following both of them for probably 6 months. But then I quickly realized Kelsey was really going to be the film. But I was trying to throw people off in school, throw them off the trail a little bit so there wasn't so much pressure on Kelsey. So part of that was really just a little bit of a diversionary tactic so that Kelsey felt a little less pressure. Anika's a great girl, but she was very self-aware of the camera, and Kelsey is just going to be who she's going to be no matter what, which is awesome.
Can I just ask one more question? Do you think that having the camera there was like kind of another part of your support system in a way to help you get through, or you think that was?
I wouldn't say it was a support system. I just thought it was the reality of me knowing that this film would have a positive outcome. So it was more of a motivation than, you're in my way and I'm answering her question. More of a motivation. I think my shirt's inside out, guys. It is, but it'll be our secret. More of a motivation to graduate and succeed, because I knew that if I didn't graduate, this story would be shit. So it was motivation. It wasn't a support. Oh, Dan was a support in and of himself. We worked together a lot. If I didn't want something in the film, he would put it down, or if I was like, you really don't need to film this right now, he was really good with that. Beginning cuts of the film, I call my mom a crackhead, and she didn't like that, so we took it out. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, from the beginning, that was one of the deals I made with Kelsey, is that you're going to be a partner, and you'll have... This reminds me of one of the first films, the shots I filmed of you when you're getting ready for school in the morning. Why didn't we use that, Diego? That was a good scene. Anyway, but I really do think, I did journalism, I did photojournalism for 20 years, and I always told the person that I was working with, we're collaborators in this. This is not me, the photographer, the filmmaker, filming you, the subject. It was like, this is a team effort, we're going to do this together. And Kelsey would sometimes call me when something interesting was happening. Sometimes something interesting would happen and she wouldn't call me. I was like, why didn't you call me? That would have been great to film.
Like tattoos. He always wanted to go with me to get a tattoo or a piercing, and
That makes sense.
No. He's like, I want to be there when you get your next tattoo. My next tattoo was right here, and it was a little awkward because like half my boob was showing. Like this Dan wouldn't want to be here for this. I'm like, no. So
Yeah.
it was fun.
The day you showed the tattoo to Ms. Franker, and then we got that scene, she's describing. She's like, oh yeah, and I like passed out on the table, and I'm like, oh, so fun to film.
I have no body fat, so getting a tattoo hurts like a bitch. So it's like, I don't know, I just faint. Wake up and continue.
Great.
So, yeah, I'd like to introduce two of our faculty members who have really been great about coming out to help focus some of our discussion. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Christy Koenig as an assistant professor in the Department of Occupational She doesn't have any students in the room.
No one that I paid to be here.
And she's a consultant to the NEST program, an inclusive program for children and adolescents with autism in New York City, with the New York City Department of Education. And she's published and presented widely on topics related to examining the efficacy of interventions, including a recent study on yoga for children with autism that was featured on NPR and among other places. And she's currently working on 2 projects with support from Autism Speaks, the Keeping It Real project, what works to develop strength-based models, services, and programs for middle school children, in which self-advocates are educating teachers, staff, and middle school students, so kind of mirrors a lot of what we saw here, both on and off the spectrum, and how to incorporate lessons of anti-bullying. And there's more, but I just have to be selective because we have limited time. And I'd like to invite up producer director Lynn McVeigh, who is an associate professor of television, sound, and children's media, and faculty area head of sound design at the Cambar Institute of Film and Television in the undergraduate department at the Tisch School of the Arts. Here we are. Lynn has been recognized for many things, in particular a prestigious David Payne Carter Award for her teaching. She's a co-director of the Fearless Theater Company, made up of young people with and without disabilities, along with NYU staff and students and others. Her productions include radio series Satchmo's Gang and the play The Music Time Cafe, as well as History Makers, a video created with students in workshops at 2 high schools next to the World Trade Center, followed by a sequel in 2011, Looking Back, Moving On. And most recently, Lynn was invited by the National Science Foundation to serve on a panel to review informal science, technology, engineering, and mathematics proposals regarding children's programs and research. So we're really honored to have you guys up here to talk a bit about the film and bring your insights. So I don't know if you want to start off with some thoughts about the film from the perspective of...
That was really something. Well, actually, Faye, you asked the questions to Kelsey.
Oh no, I'm so
Well
sorry.
done. You've been involved too much in this whole process of filmmaking, which Faye is so incredibly talented at. Well, this was incredibly intense, this film, in terms of the choices of shots that Dan made of you. There were a lot of close-ups, and there were a lot of close-ups of other people there. When you saw and heard the film for the first time, how did you react to having this intense experience of you being so close to everybody that would be in the audience, and obviously to yourself too? I mean, there are many choices of way to do shooting, but this was at least what Dago ended up having, what have you. It was a lot. It's very, very personal, very highly intimate. Maybe that's because I was in the front row, but I don't think so.
First time seeing it, I saw the preview of the film, I think more than I've seen the actual film.
Rough cuts going.
Yeah, but when I first saw the film was with the family, right?
That was maybe the first finished
And I
time.
was like, oh shit.
Your family.
Yeah, apparently my dad had already seen it. Dan can go more into that. I wasn't really worried about him. I was more worried about my mom. I stayed out of reach, so she couldn't throw anything at me. She couldn't hit me. But it went relatively well. Now that it's all out there, I get like approached a lot from like random people, like in bars, for instance. Like, hey, you're that girl. I'm like, shit. I'm like, yep, that's me. I don't like talking about it a lot.
Outside of these events.
Yeah. No, I'm done. My school doesn't know, my college doesn't know about it. I want to keep it that way. I don't want to answer a whole bunch of questions. Because then I have to go into all the intense stuff, and I'd rather not.
We're talking about your mom's Facebook and stuff. Yeah.
Oh my god. Who cares about Kelsey Facebook? And my mom, yeah. And my mom likes everything the second it's posted. And she hasn't quite figured out how to share pictures yet, so she tags herself in them. So it'll be a picture of like me, Dan, and somebody else, and my mom will be in there somewhere. Because she's like, oh, if I tag myself, it'll show up on my wall. But she doesn't know how to like take it, save it, and she's not tech savvy. She barely texts. Actually, I'm surprised she actually answers our text messages. Yeah.
Let me just add one thing about your dad seeing the film. So she mentioned her dad seeing the film. So we did separate screenings for her dad's side and her mom's side, and we were really nervous about it because the first time they had seen all this, it was the first, they had never talked about some of the stuff that's in the film, some of the past difficult things. So it was almost like film as catalyst for family therapy, which is dangerous. So we go to her dad's house, and her dad's like, oh, I've already seen it. I was like, what do you mean we've already seen it? You've already seen it. And it turns out that Diego's in New York and Rose, I'm in New Hampshire, so we use Vimeo to share cuts of the film back and forth. And I always password protect it, except for, I guess, once. I forgot to password protect it. So he Googled Who Cares About Kelsey one day, film pops up, he watches it. He's like, yeah, it was okay. There's just one thing, though, that's really off base, really wrong, and I'm a little bit bothered by it. I was like, oh shit, it's gonna be sexual abuse, what is it that we're talking about? He said, we moved to Georgia. I was already in the military. We didn't move down to join the military. I was like, I can change that. We can edit that. We'll fix that. No problem. We're good. But, and Dad, it's funny because her dad will say that he's proud of her to everybody but Kelsey. To this day, we were just talking about this morning, he's never said that to her. So you can psychoanalyze all you want, but that's just, it's still, I think you've gotten closer. Do you want to just briefly talk about you and your dad now?
You saw us go shooting. We don't go shooting since then, we haven't. But for my birthday, which was in October, Dan and everyone at the IOD got me Blue Man Group tickets. And his birthday was March 15th. So for his birthday and my birthday, we went to Blue Man Group. And it was fun, had a beer, hung out. I'll be sitting in my room, because I do that a lot, when I live with my parents. And he'd walk in, he'd throw me a sweatshirt, and he'd throw me a beer. He's like, come on, I'm going to be your best friend right now. I'm not your father. Just, open up, get all the skeletons out, and then I'll have a couple beers, chill out. 2 o'clock in the morning, we're still out there drinking, and better part of the wasted part, but it was fun. We talk a lot more. I'll call him when I need to vent, and he'll listen. He's not really good on the advice thing, because I don't think he's ever given a girl advice. But he tries. But yeah.
Lynn and I were saying, what are we doing up here?
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
I'll just give you my quick thoughts. It was a beautiful film, and one of the things that I know is really important is this idea of looking at individuals that are struggling as having strengths and inherent strengths. And I think watching this film, there was a theme for me with you where you said early on, a little bit of love goes a long way with me. And then your guidance counselor, I can't remember her name, Mrs. Kathy Frankor. She viewed you as that person that, really had a lot of strengths, and she even used language in the film. You're determined versus, you don't pay attention, which is two very different sides of the same coin. And can you just talk about your relationship with her? Do you still keep in touch with her? Because to me, that was such a strong piece of someone valuing you for your worth versus all the difficulty that you had.
We don't talk as much as we used to, simply because I'm busy and she's busy. Like Joanne, I cannot get a hold of Joanne if I tried. I saw her for 5 minutes the other day for the first time in months. I did help her teach a class at University of New Hampshire. I don't know, it was snowing that day. That's all I remember. When I was going to move out of, a little history. I was going to get back with Sean. I had previously broken up. I was still living with my parents, and my dad kicked me out because he royally hates Sean, to the point where he told Sean that if he sees Sean in my neighborhood or his car, he was going to blow it up with him in it. So I was like, okay, well, you don't like Sean, so he kicked me out when I got back with him. And she's like, well, you can move in with us. We have a room. She's always there for him to talk. I'll call her, cry. She's like, I got ice cream. Come on over. We'll sit in our PJs. And she's a really cool lady. I love her. But I haven't, unfortunately, seen her as much as I want to.
Maybe we can open up for questions maybe after this, but let me just say quickly, the process you saw in the film, Renew, two of the key elements are unconditional care. So no matter how hard Kelsey pushed back, they were going to be there for her. And it's also self-determination. So when Kelsey stopped taking her meds, you didn't see them saying, how can we figure out how to get Kelsey to take her meds again? It was, okay, she's an adult, she made this decision for rational reasons, now we've got to work with this new reality. How do we shift the supports? How do we change the way we work with Kelsey? How do we get other teachers on board? And there's a lot more about Renew, but it's a really incredible person-centered planning process that was started by some colleagues of mine at the IOD. She mentioned Joanne. She's in the film a little bit, Joanne Malloy, and she founded the whole Renew process. And it really works best within an environment of a school which has adopted positive behavioral supports that we talked about earlier.
It's really impressive.
Great.
Yeah.
So just shout out, we can try and get a mic around, maybe just shout out questions. And
I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll pass the mic around because,
Okay.
you know, I'm supposedly a sound person here.
All right.
If someone has.
All right, go ahead, speak loud, and we'll repeat if we need to.
Nice and loud.
You
Nice and loud, stand up.
have to survive to the end of today.
Thanks, Meg.
I just wanted to say thanks so much for making the movie, and I feel like there definitely was, this movie was definitely needed out there. I was just wondering what your transition was like from high school to college, and in terms of academic support, like how it's been different or how it's been similar with the Renew program, and especially since you've had different faculty and that kind of thing.
The transition to college wasn't that hard. They actually the professors make themselves more available than my teachers ever did, so. But in terms of if I need help, I have academic advisors, there's tutors, counselors, I call them teachers, they're not, I don't know, they're teachers. Email, phone number, and personal email, which is always good. I haven't had any major problems where I've had to use those supports yet. I'm really low key with it.
You told about your ADHD.
Yeah, I told about my ADHD. That's about it. And I kind of found out about the film because Dan had to go to the school and take pictures. He's like standing on chairs. I'm like, you're definitely not obvious right now. But they know the bare minimum about the movie. I don't even know what it's called. But yeah, it wasn't really that hard. That answered your question. There was probably another piece to it, and I totally forgot.
Like, does UNH have the Renew program, or does that just exist in the high school setting?
Just in the high school setting.
Yeah. Renew ends at graduation. So the stuff you saw with Kelsey interacting with Kathy Franco and others was totally on their own, like volunteer effort. And I would say there's a huge void in our society generally. And there's probably lots of problems in schools, but there's maybe even a bigger void in that transition area. And there are a lot, and Faye knows this well, there's a lot of people that are trying to address this, but it's just a massive problem. There's not the funding for it. There's not, I think Renew could be a great transition program, that person-centered planning. It's just not there. The money's not there.
Hopefully it's still get the word out.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Are there any new values that you think are important that you might bring into Renew after being through the process yourself?
So like ways you would change the process? Huh. Question.
I'm not sure if I would. I've never had that question. And I have done this a lot. Maybe people younger, like facilitators that are younger. That's about it. Because John can walk around like, look at this one. I'm like, I'm not talking to him. Huh. He goes with his button-up shirt, and I'm wearing like baggy sweatshirt. I'm like, look at you. You have no clue. But that's about it. Just like if I was to walk into a school and be like, yo, let's chit chat. Person would be like, okay. And you have Dan walk in with his suit and tie, and you're like, no. Like, door, please. So I don't know, like.
I think that's great. I think that's a great example she gave. I will give you an illustration of what Kelsey just said. I spoke to the Girl Scouts of the USA a couple weeks ago in Washington, big national inclusion conference. I showed pieces of Including Samuel, the trailer for this. They put me during lunch. Half the girls had not eaten yet. Half of them were still on line at the buffet table, and they're like, okay, go command their attention. 300 13 to 16-year-old girls. So what happened was, I get up there, and literally nobody was listening to me. It was like, I've never been for an audience like that, where just nobody was listening. But then, I put the film on, and everyone's like, you could hear a pin drop, and everyone's watching the film. Film clip ends, I start talking to Ben again, they ignore me. Start doing their own thing. Next film clip comes on, you can hear a pin drop. And it's just, I mean, to me, it's painful. It's a painful lesson of just how old I am, but also on just the power of film, you know? And that's why I got into this business.
Can I just ask a quick question about where the funding comes from for Renew? Because I think that question about transition that you asked is a lot about funding. I know New York State has cut, for example, there were pilot programs and they just got, they were supposed to be funded for 3 years. And,
So the question was about funding for Renew.
Yeah.
The funding in New Hampshire started through a Department of Education grant. So the New Hampshire DOE has done a lot of progressive things around transition, all kinds of things, positive behavioral supports. They had funding for that for a while. And then that funding went away. They got funding from a big foundation called the Endowment for Health that actually gave a lot of money for our film as well. And now they're struggling. They're struggling to keep it going. They're doing a lot of national work and they do fee-for-service technical assistance work around the country. But it's really tough. It's tough to keep it going. Even with the visibility the film's giving, all the positive work they're doing, it's really hard to keep it going.
yeah. Good, more questions?
Oh, we're not leaving until we get some more questions, guys. Come on, don't be shy. Oh yeah, go ahead. No, come to
We've got
In the movie, it's okay. I'm sure you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yeah. Great. So in the movie, there's that scene where you flush down the meds. Did you ever figure out a medicine program that worked for you, or are you still?
I've been off medication since my senior year. I found other ways to control it. The reason I did stop my senior year is because I knew that once I graduated, I wouldn't have health insurance. And I'd rather graduate and have systems and methods in order to maintain my ADHD rather than be dumped after high school and not know a thing about how to handle it. So there would be on weekends, Dan, cut it off, she doesn't want pictures. Yo, kidding.
my job.
I would on weekends get hopped up on Red Bull and be like, okay, I'll be sitting there and I'll be like, how do I handle this right now? Because right now I want to bounce up and down. Put music on.
What do you call it?
Angry white girl music. I listen to a lot of like Slipknot and Evanescence and random shit. But I taught myself how to control it. This morning I had a tea with 4 French vanilla creamers in it and 6 sugars in a cup like this big. And I can maintain it really well. Sitting in the car is not that bad actually. I can fall asleep. I also realized that caffeine has a reverse effect now, and I can sleep when I drink it. I can wake up in the middle of the night, chug a Red Bull, and then fall right back to sleep. Which is really abnormal, but yeah, I learned to control it. I don't advocate for people to discontinue the use of their medication. I do say that if it's not working for you, maybe connect with somebody in a higher power, and make a change. If it's working for you, stay on it. Only reason why I stopped was I was 18 and 75 pounds. I haven't gotten any taller, so you can imagine what I looked like. Wasn't sleeping for months at a time, so I couldn't do it anymore. I was a week away from being fed through a tube, and I'm all set with that one, but yeah.
Kelsey, I mean, she's also, we've known each other, 3 or 4 years now. She also talks a lot more about stuff she's feeling, which I think is amazing. I mean, I used to bug you about college, and you'd say, Dan?
Shut up.
Shut up, which was great. I was like, good, you can tell me that. And one thing you should know is that the Renew process, they really encourage families to be involved. Kelsey was very clear that she didn't want her family involved. She wanted to do this without them. They also will connect kids to therapists and counselors, and that was something that also Kelsey did not want to do, and that was her right. And so, we've talked a lot about this. If there's ever a time she wants to connect with a therapist, whatever. We did a survey. We were at LIU Post this morning, and we were talking about this. And I said, all right, just for kicks, and we'll do it again today. How many of you have either know someone really close to you, or you yourself perhaps, but let's just say know someone really close to you that has been to a therapist or counselor at some point in their life? Yeah, that's pretty much the answer we get. So I think the point is that there's still a lot of stigma, and Kelsey has said it, she still sees it as a sign of weakness to go to a counselor, and I've tried to say, I have, my wife has, it's a sign of strength.
I think there was another hand up here.
How early does,
Can you use it? I can't hear it too well. Thanks.
how early does the Renew program start? Is it only a high school program? And is a life coach part of something that is given to you? And then I have a question for Dan. what motivated you to do this?
No, well, why don't you talk about when you started Renew and if it would have helped if it started sooner, perhaps?
I started Renew
2006. So it was like my second sophomore year. My contacts are
so I can't even see you right now. It would have helped if I was maybe in the middle school when I started it. I stayed back half a year in 8th grade, and then I was dropped into the high school and I was expected to know what to do, and that was not the case. So instead of asking somebody for help, I just did whatever the hell I wanted to, and no one said anything to you. At 16, the teachers would pretty much hold the door open for you while you walked out the back doors and went and smoked a cigarette. So starting it in the middle school would have helped a little bit till I would know what I was doing. Maybe I would have been a little bit more successful and had the skills in which I have now then walked into the high school would have been a little bit more tolerable. And I wouldn't have had the fuck you attitude I still have. But yeah, it would have helped. And the rest was for you.
Okay, so nationally, they're starting, Renew generally is a high school program, but they're starting to do it in middle schools. They're just piloting it in middle schools now. And really, Renew is a form of person-centered planning, which some of you are very familiar with and some of you aren't. Basically, it's about saying the kid is at the center of this process. They've got the power to figure out who they want to work with. They're going to be the ones to set their dreams and their goals. It's not us telling the kid what he or she should be aspiring to. It's the kid identifying that. And we've been doing person-centered planning with Samuel since he was 7 or 8 years old. And so he identified at one point that he really wanted to go to the Daytona 500. So we were just at the Daytona 500 about 3 weeks ago as a result of that. He identified 4 years ago that he wanted a service dog. So we were on the wait list for 3 years, and in November we got a service dog. And so that all came out of his planning process. So if you look at, actually, the Including Samuel website, we've got some samples in the resources section of person-centered planning exercises. One's called MAPS. There's some other really great approaches. My son Isaiah was really struggling in high school his freshman year. He was just disconnected from school, not engaged. His grades were going down. His friends were not great kids that we thought he should be hanging out with. So I said, hold on, let's just go out for lunch. I'm going to feed you sushi for 3 hours, and we're just going to talk. And that works with a teenage boy, to just keep feeding them for a while. And we use the Renew, portfolio, which is actually on the website. So there's flyers about Renew out there, but if you go to the Institute on Disability at UNH and look for the Renew project, you can download the youth portfolio for free. And it's a really great guide to just have this conversation with teenagers about what are your goals, what are your strengths, what are your challenges, who do you have in your life that you can count on as a resource, what do you maybe need to change in your life. And after that conversation with Isaiah, it totally changed a lot of our decisions about his education. Changed to a different school, different goals, different supports, everything changed. And after 3 hours of sushi, it was expensive, but it was worth it.
Can I just do a plug?
Yeah,
The
go ahead.
website is amazing, Including Samuel's site, which has been going on for a while, and
Yeah.
just so many things keep evolving with it, but the resources are fantastic, so I just want to encourage people to take a look at
Thanks.
that.
And who cares about Kelsey's site? You can watch pretty much everything but the full film. You can watch mini films we created, there's resources, there's interviews with incarcerated youth. I didn't really talk about this, but just real briefly, we did 9 mini films as part of this project. 6 of them are interviews that I did with incarcerated youth, talking about what got them on that path, what could have made a difference. They're really powerful. And then there's one mini film called Education Revolution at Somersworth High School, which is just about the school-wide transformation of the school. One on a kid with autism, a girl, there's some good stuff in there. So you had a question, Mo, in the back? Yep.
It's for you, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Were you able to remain neutral while you were filming Kelsey for 2 years, or did you find yourself wanting to help her with her math, or encourage her, or intervening with her parents, or
Right.
how did you handle that?
Well, nobody can remain neutral. I mean, you're human, and you have feelings, and you have opinions. But what I tried to do, and you can tell me if I did it well, was to not change her reality, not say, you need to do this, or you need to do that. I would say, listen, I'll listen to you till my ears fall off, but I'm not really here to give you advice. Since we finished the film, I think we have a much more communicative relationship in that way. She gives me good advice, I give her some advice. We just talk a lot more personally, but during the filmmaking, I did journalism, as I said, for 20 years, and I know that there's ethics, and you just can't, if you start intervening, unless you make that part of the film, you've changed the trajectory of the film, and that's just not ethically right. So I really tried not to do that. Is that the full answer?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead, and then we'll come back here.
Kelsey, I'm curious as to what advice you would give 19-year-old Kelsey now that you're in this place. Like if you were to work with somebody that, you know, you really are, you know, you could really relate to, how you would go about, you know, giving them support or motivating them.
Are they still in school?
Sure.
Like, you gotta give me a scenario, come on.
Sure, like if, you know, if you're looking back, you know, watching the film, seeing 19-year-old Kelsey, like what would you do as somebody who's working in the program to motivate you in that situation? Like was there something you felt was missing or a different approach they could have taken that you feel like, man, I really wish they could have done this or...
Definitely a personal perspective on things. If I was to go into a school when the kid was 19, slacking off being an idiot, like, dude, stop being a friggin' idiot. Like, you know you can do this, you're just stubborn. I'm the most stubborn person you'll ever meet in your lifetime. So stubborn. People hate it. Just be like, you don't want to be here forever. Just, I'll help you, I'll be here every step of the way, but you're gonna have to work with me and you're gonna have to do this because I know you don't want to be here and you know you don't want to be here. So let's get this show on the road and let's hop to.
What about the idea of like when you push back, what that really means? 'Cause that's like,
When I push back or when
in
they
school,
push back?
when you did.
Oh. I tested people. That is my job in life. I do it to everyone. I still do it to Dan sometimes. It's quite funny. Which is why I probably haven't got a boyfriend yet. At least a good one. I'll test you, and I will push you, and I will swear at you, and I will be the biggest hard ass you've ever met in your lifetime, just to see how far you're gonna go, and if you turn around and walk away. And if you turn around and walk away, that's the last straw for you. I don't go back. But Jonathan and everyone was pretty good at pushing back. When I was being a pain in the ass, Dan and Jonathan were like, dude, shut up. Like, let's go. And I'd be like, fine.
I never taught you that way.
You should have. But, I don't know, I think that's about it.
And just understanding the context of Kelsey's life where so many people have given up on her. You know, whether it's educators, certain times in her family. And so the testing is like, are you gonna give up on me like everybody else has? And if I'm acting this way and you're still not gonna give up on me, then you pass the test. And Ms. Francor was just like coming back no matter what happened. So you had to-
After you graduated from high school, you wanted to go into the criminal justice field. Now you want to be a school counselor. Did this experience change that, or was it something else?
There was many things that changed my perspective on what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a police officer, but no sooner did the movie come out, my brother decided he wanted to be one too. So now he has it, and I don't, simply because he had a military background. The only reason I would go back into thinking about criminal justice and becoming a cop is to pick on my brother. Yeah, pull over my dad and pick on my brother. I would hide his gun in his handcuffs so he would never find them. And then laugh at him when he went to look. And this is my career. This is what I was meant to do. And I don't want to walk into a school and be like a complete idiot not knowing what I'm doing. So that's why I'm going for my psychology degree. I've been told many times this is what I'm meant to do, and this is what I'm doing, so.
It's such a great way to end, but if there, like, we could probably take one or two more questions if there are any, but otherwise we can.
Anybody have any questions they want to ask? Yeah, go ahead.
What have you learned about yourself since watching yourself on screen? Because I know I had to be videotaped because I'm a future teacher. We have to watch us teach, and that's awful. Because you have to look at me, but I don't. So, you know, so what did you learn about yourself by watching yourself?
What did I learn about myself? That I'm a pain in the ass. That I doubt myself way too much. I'm a lot smarter than I give myself credit for, and maybe I should stop thinking the way that I do. I can like feel you breathing on me. that's about it, really. I should start working out more. And I had really poor choices in clothing back then. That's about it. That's all I've learned. To stay away from black stuff. Damn. I have pink though. I have pink. Yeah, I have pink. That's about it, really.
It's funny about just the dynamic with us taking pictures, because it's kind of a lot of pressure to always be in a relationship where we're filming somebody, because it's like she always had to. There is a bit of a distance or a wall when you get a camera in front of you, and I was always thinking like, what should I be filming right now, or is something going to happen where I should be filming, or can I just be, or should I be filming, or oh my gosh, she's not mic'd up and she should be mic'd up. I mean, that's what's going through your head all the time when you're filming. So when we stopped the project, it's kind of funny with this picture taking, because she had so much tolerance for me when I was filming, amazing tolerance, but now it's like... Annoyance, right? Because finally we're at a place where we don't have to think like that all the time, that every time we're together, I'm not thinking about filming, she's not thinking about being filmed, it's just being. And it's funny because my kids, Isaiah, those of you who know the film, Samuel was 4 to 7 and Isaiah was like 7 to 10 when I made the film. And there is no way they would tolerate me doing a film like that right now, because they're teenagers. What teenager wants their dad filming them all the time? So people ask me all the time, are you going to do a sequel to including Samuel? And I said, only if he wants to co-direct it and co-produce it with me, which I would do if he's interested in that. But I'm not going to do it without their total buy-in. And I don't think that's going to happen for a while.
One question. You've obviously seen this film many times. How does it make you feel?
I don't watch it anymore, because I've seen it a million times. It makes me happy to watch it, but then again I have mixed emotions because that fuckhead's in it. I really can't stand him, so that kind of puts a damper on the film a little bit. Just recently been able to like watch it or watch part of it without crying. But I like it and I'm proud of it, so. Other than that, hopefully when it comes on TV, we can get a real cut of the Sean-free edited. And then I'll be much happier. We'll be like, oh, I have a movie about me? I think that was the worst part about me, was him. That's the reason I really pretty much was the way that I was, is being in a relationship for 6 years and having to do certain things. Having to answer to somebody, always having to do something, wear whatever the other person says, like, got that bad. So now that I can watch it now and be like, haha, you suck, and you're going to jail and I hate you. So it's getting better.
We did a screening, and I'm sure wrap it up, but we did a screening for the Women's State Prison in New Hampshire. That was amazing, and probably one of the most powerful screenings, and Kelsey had just broken your windshield the day before. Right, and so the
they
cops,
didn't know that.
But yeah, right, but all part of the story. So Kelsey got up after the film and was really emotional, and I was like, "Do you want to tell them why you're crying?" And she did, and they were all just like, "What did they say?" Like,
give him my number. They're like, what did they say? Have him come visit me. We know some people. What's his name?
What's his license plate number?
Take down my inmate number. Oh my god. That was a while ago. That was last May.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I went back now, then all hell would break loose.
Okay, one more thing. But the thing that they did say also was, we are all in here because we were with guys like him. It's like, get rid of that guy. And it still took a while, for you to get to that point, but you did it. So congratulations. All right, I think it's a good place to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody. I never want to do presentations without Kelsey, and you can see why. We're having a lot of fun traveling and doing these. I just want to thank again NYU and all you guys for hosting and organizing this. You did a great job. And thank you all for coming tonight. We'll hang around for a little bit afterwards. Thanks.